Hello again, everyone, and welcome to a special one-on-one edition of Newsmakers TV. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Thursday, June 12th, and I am extremely honored and delighted to welcome back to the program for the fifth time State Senator Monique Limon, now State Senator, soon to be State Senator Pro Tem, leader of the State Senate, as she was voted this week by her colleagues and will take that position next year. Senator Limon, thank you so much for joining us and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Jerry. I appreciate it. You reached out very early.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of times people don't really pay enough attention to what's going on in Sacramento or their representatives. They elect people and then they kind of forget about it. This is a big deal. It's a big deal for the state. It's a big deal for history. You're the first woman, you're the first Latina, first woman of color to hold this position. It's one of the
First mother.
first mother. Another, I'm sure we could go down the list, but you know, in a normal universe, we would spend some time talking about that. But unfortunately, Donald Trump has changed all that, and there's just stuff happening. This happens. You would send to this position at a time when the state is almost literally under attack by the federal government. U.S. Senator Alex Padilla was, I guess he wasn't arrested, but he was taken down, put on the floor for going to a press conference of the Homeland Security. What can you tell us about that and what's going on just generally?
So, look, I was actually on the phone with our U.S. Senator Alex Padilla on Wednesday night, and we were discussing this and how serious the situation was. So, to wake up and see this happen midday today, I think was certainly very concerning. And deep. It was very concerning and deep on a lot of different levels. And so I think for me, it also amplifies the magnitude of concern that is happening here. You have elected officials that are being taken down for for questions that they are asking. We have also been told, we saw a labor leader in Los Angeles who is being accused of conspiracy. These are very serious acts, and regrettably, they also create a concern, an alarm, a fear that is growing and growing really by the hour.
Yeah, and of course, Attorney General Bonta has sued the government about the president's deploying of National Guard without the approval of Governor Newsom, and then bringing in the Marines. That's, I think, as we speak, that's in federal court. I know you just came from a meeting involving the detention of a number of farm workers in your district uh,
Yes.
yesterday. There's what's going on in LA. It's it's hard not to call it racial profiling. What's your kind of overall big picture take on what the president and the government is trying to do here in California?
Well, there's no doubt that, there is a desire to, kind of break up, what's happening. They're trying to break up, I think, what California is about. And certainly they're doing this in other states. And I will tell you that I was at the press conference in Ventura. In Ventura County, we had 35 farm workers detained. In Santa Maria, we had 5. Those are the numbers that have been confirmed thus far. And this was one time where we had the Farm Bureau, the growers, the workers who are not always typically on this, immigration rights folks who are not on the same page. They are on the same page right now, saying, stop. This is not, you are arresting people as they work. And so this idea that there is only folks, we're only going after one type of person, one type, is just really not accurate. And I think that that's created a lot of fears. I have to actually thank a lot of the growers in the Farm Bureau. They've been very, very up to date on their legal rights. On what has to happen and what warrants need to be presented in order for them to come on to their property. But this is something that is very, very, very concerning to us. Cause has been involved. There's so many organizations that you would typically not actually see work together that are working together to ask for a stop to this. I'm grateful to our federal representatives, both, U.S. Senator Alex Padilla, Adam Schiff, our Congress members, Salud Carvajal and Julia Brownlee recently, like in the last 48 hours, issued a statement really looking at the humanity of this and what it's doing and breaking up families. There is not an hour that I am not getting messages from members of the community who I represent that aren't in fear of what is happening. Right before I logged in, I was getting messages from folks in Oxnard saying that they're very concerned, parents that are sending somebody else to pick up their kids, because it is also now believed that it's not just going after those who may not be here with documents. It's people who are U.S. citizens have gotten caught up in this, and so we're pretty concerned and are staying together on this as elected officials in different bodies and branches of government.
You and I talked back in December after the election about what you kind of foresaw or what you were concerned about, and how the legislature had put together a package. I think it was $25 million, may have been more, for legal action against the feds. But what we've seen, I mean, what do you think? Is it worse than you thought things were going to unfold?
Yes, it is. It is worse than what I thought could unfold. Yeah, I think it is a lot more concerning. And I do think that the actions California took in January, I want to be clear, I think they were the right actions. And a lot of people criticize those actions, saying, hey, hold on, wait, we don't know how it's going to be. And I actually think that that is exactly why we are better prepared to be able to move this forward. I think our, governor and attorney general have been very clear. They are active. They are busy, pulling together legal experts, our attorneys in the state, trying to, ensure that we're very clear about what the state's rights are, and where we can, of course, put a pause, a stop to what is happening. It is breaking our communities, and that's a big concern. I mean, this isn't what we want.
What do I'm sure I hear this every day, and I'm sure you do as well. Well, yeah, we all know what's wrong. What are you supposed to do about it? I mean, what can people do? What action can people take? Do you think that the weekend's No Kings protest, is that a good venue for people? Should they stay away from that? Is Trump trying to create a pretext, for more National Guard, more violence? What do
Look,
you tell people when they say,
I think
what can
first
we
and
do?
foremost, peaceful protest is very, very important. There, as an elected official, I can tell you that there are things that are said on a daily basis to me, right? With the goal of triggering, of getting me upset. And I just think it's look, all of us right now have to just keep focused. This is the peaceful protest is, I think, the most important thing. I can't tell people not to do something. I think that we speaking your voice and protesting is our right. We have the right to do that. And I think that that's something, we're not asking for folks to take that away. And certainly we're watching what's happening. I also think it's important to recognize that there are those who cannot exercise that right for a number of reasons at this moment. And there's those who really are living in fear. And they are choosing to be in the shadows in this moment. So for those that can speak up, I hope, folks will speak up. Look, this is about keeping our communities safe, keeping our communities together and cohesive. I don't want us to lose sight in only focus on the politics of this, but also the humanity of this. I was given a report that a 12-year-old, U.S. citizen was just left without his parents in Oxnard. His parents are gone. No one knows where they're at. And they were detained. We don't know where they're at. I mean, getting this information is really serious. There's a piece of humanity here. This is breaking and hurts our communities. And so I don't want that to be lost in just the rhetoric or the politics. Yes, the legal, the political, all of that is part of this equation, but there are also people who are suffering. And I think for me, look, I'm the very proud daughter of immigrant parents. My grandfather came here to the Bracero program. He picked strawberries in Oxnard. So as I watched those videos on Tuesday of farm workers be chased, of course, I thought, my goodness, the same great country that has seen me grow up, that has invested in my success, right? That has let me go from public schools to, future pro tem of the Senate, is a country that is now, questioning, challenging, and breaking those values that have made us a great country and a great state. And this is why, for me, it's personal, it's deep, and I think that there's a lot for us to do.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, the presidency, at least in terms of rhetoric, was always a position where you were trying to unify the country. This clearly is not that. This is trying to divide up the country very specifically, very intentionally, very strategically. And I note in the last 48 to 72 hours a change in the tone of Governor Newsom. I've been watching him since he was a parking commissioner back in San Francisco, and I thought he was kind of a little wobbly on Trump. It seems to me he's crossed the Rubicon now with the kind of language and I think truth that he's been speaking recently. Do you agree with what he's been saying?
Look, I think on this issue, I certainly, feel like he's been pretty vocal. He's standing up. I think that there is a lot of support for, how direct he is in saying, hey, there's authorities that the state has. We're going to protect our communities. This is not what we want. Despite what folks again may think, I think that we want unity. Our starting point is to want unity, to want alignment, to work well with the federal government. I have said that over and over. That is always our starting point. And so I think that you're really seeing our governor stand up and say, hey, this is the line we draw. We believe we have the legal right to sit, in terms of the questioning of the National Guard being deployed. And also this is our community that's being torn apart. Our governor was in Oxnard yesterday. He's been in LA. And I do really appreciate where he is at on this issue. And I think it's the important side to be on in this particularly difficult moment.
Yeah, I mean, this is such an unbelievable time we're in, and we could talk about this aspect for forever. But I want to be respectful of your time, but touch on a couple of other things. You've really stepped up in this Sable Oil situation where you find this oil company almost mirroring the Trump administration in kind of refusing to acknowledge or accept the rulings and judgments and so on of government agencies, of courts. Where does that stand?
So look, we are, there's, I think, the courts have sided with the state of California. I think our state agencies are trying, but this is also one of those pieces, and you're talking about the mirroring of what's happening, where you have heard multiple state agencies say we've never had, worked with a company who has just outright not followed the laws and has been open about their desire to not follow the laws. And so I think that these are first for California. Again, putting, the policy itself aside, one of the things that's really difficult is to watch a company come from out of state and choose not to follow laws, even though our state agencies have asked them to. And that is something that's a problem. We are grateful that the courts have sided with us. But again, this presents a bigger issue for California. Where we're having companies who want to do business in our state but don't want to follow our laws and are outright saying that they're not going to. And I think that we're appreciative of where the courts have landed, but also know that there's more work to do. And I think that when you see that, and look, the response to that particular situation related to Sable is also response from the community. There really hasn't been a desire to build community trust. And that is, I think, a concern for us as well, that we continue to be worried about whether or not this is safe, whether or not there can be another spill, whether it has gone through the proper review, proper process, so that we could, of course, feel like it's not going to potentially happen again. And so if they refuse, to give us the information to comply with California state laws, it creates a situation where I think our community's been pretty clear that it's past the point of being able to trust, right? It is now at the point where there is a desire to say, hey, this is just not how we do the work here in California, and certainly not in Santa Barbara.
Yeah. And then in the background up in Sacramento, of course, we have you're working on the budget. You're facing this June 15th deadline for the legislature to pass. As I understand it, the leadership at least has agreed on uh, a,
A framework.
a framework, and there's some big differences with what the governor proposed. Medicaid is and Medi-Cal certainly one of them. Where does that stand?
So look, we will be adopting a framework. I think what's really important about Medi-Cal, there's been so much discussion about that, right? That no one who is using Medi-Cal now is going to be asked to leave Medi-Cal. So really, it's about the expansion, and I think it's super difficult. It's been a very difficult conversation in Sacramento, and certainly when you look, at history, at targeting one group, whatever that group has been, whether it's been women or any other right group, it is never an easy conversation, and is one that generates a lot of discussion and debate and deliberation. And so I think for us, we're really clear on our values, and excluding groups of people just because of whatever background they may or may not have is not helpful. The debate about Medi-Cal is whether or not people should get preventative care. The law already allows in all really states, if you need emergency care, you get it. So this I think it's also important for people to understand that the debates about preventative care versus emergency care, and emergency care is always significantly more expensive than preventative care. So we've continued. I've been a member of the health committee for 8 years. These are really difficult conversations. It's going to be a difficult budget. We do believe people will feel the tightening of the budget and cuts. That is, that's something that is a great concern, and in part that people keep saying and looking at just the state, but in part this is also coming from where the federal government is. They are changing their match formula in terms of what they give the state on the medical side, and so we're watching that. They're threatening to cut transportation, to housing, a number of funding sources that we have been able to partner with. And those are all going to be real concerns for us.
Yeah. And then, the other area where the feds have really come after California is on climate, clean air, things in that category. They are clean air standards. And I know there's a dispute within the budget about the cap and trade money. But I think, your ascension to pro tem sends us a pretty strong signal based on your policy background on the environment of protecting the progressive climate legislation the state has. What's your assessment of that?
Look, I think, in the middle of what's been a very difficult week, right, my colleagues have supported me to be the next pro tem of the California Senate. And, I want to thank, first of all, our current pro tem, Mike McGuire. He's been doing, he's going through it. He's in the thick of this, right? He's leading our caucus, our House, in really significant ways. And I think that that's something that's super notable. And I will, come after him. And I do think about the fact that in a lot of ways, Jerry, you know me, you've known my family. And we grew up here in the community. I grew up here. I went to public schools. I was that kid that, went to different nonprofits or classes after school, right? My parents working class. I'm the first in my family to go to college. I think of so many things that have worked for us in this great state. And those are the things that we're really fighting for, so that they work for everybody, not just for one or two people or, a few people at a time. We really fight for that. And so I think that the fact that in a really difficult week, the daughter of immigrants, first in her family to go to college, someone who didn't know that this is where I would end up, gets elected to lead the California Senate in the future. So I think that it says something about where we're at, as a legislative body.
Well, when your election was announced on Monday, you said something that I found that really sort of touched me. You said, on the day we are witnessing our California values being under attack, we are electing the first woman of color ever in history to serve in this role. This is significant. It matters, and we will move forward together. Where's this all going to end? What do you, I mean, I have to admit, I find it difficult not to fall into despair, just personally, about what's happening. I mean, how do you kind of keep going, and how do you foresee an exit from this?
Look, I think there is no other way but to keep going. And I think while we may not know exactly where the exit door is, or when it is, I think we have to keep going. And having served in the first administration, we felt a different way. I think that this time is much harder, but we have to keep going. There is no other choice. So we balance the budget, we do the work, we do the policy, we prepare for what we think could come. And I think that that's all we do it collectively as legislators. That is important. For me, there's not an option not to keep going.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you're the head of the Latino caucus, or the chair, or
So I'm the vice chair. Well, I formally I've had, there's now a vacancy since I've ascended into this, designee role. But I'm a member of the Latino caucus. I'm a member of the women's caucus. And so very active in that. The women's caucus is, the only bipartisan affinity caucus that we have in the legislature. And I will say, I hope some folks go see just some of the praise that I've gotten, or recognition that I've gotten from colleagues across the spectrum for, ascending into this new leadership role.
Not to mention from Santa Barbara High, once a Don, always a Don. But I wanted to just on the point about the Latino caucus, have you convened about what happened to Senator Padilla today?
We are actually doing it,
Matt.
We have been in touch. We are convening in a matter of minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to let you get out of here. I guess I have to call you Madam President now. I don't know.
No, I'm designee right now.
Madam President designee, State Senator Pro Tem Monique Limon. Thank you so much for joining us as always on Newsmakers. And I want to tell you, this is our 500th episode. And so we've been doing this for a long time, and I think it's very appropriate that you would be our special guest today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being accessible to us and for all you do for the community.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I look forward to continuing to talk with you and also working with the community.
Thanks.
Thank you.